Hello fellow drummers, musicians out there, thanks for tuning in. This is Mike again. Hope you have a fantastic new year 2019 with a lot of stuff to come. So I thought I make a video about my five best tips for using Superior Drummer. I know that a lot of guys pulled the trigger on Superior Drummer, purchased the software, used the promo and the sale Toontrack offered over the last weeks and month, and are new proud owners of Superior Drummer. So I thought I give you some of the tips that I find quite helpful. So without further ado, let's dive into directly. Tip number one is using the cached mode. I just loaded up the Yamaha default kit here, no processing at all, and you see already just loading up the full kit eats up to 2 GB of RAM power, which is quite a lot. Taking into consideration that you now might route out the instruments into your DAW and process them even further, which will need more RAM power and more RAM power. So you can end up in a situation where you have some glitches in audio, but there's a trick. Click here on the little arrows here, and this window will show up, and just enable the cached mode. What Superior Drummer now is going to do, it will just load up the samples from the specific MIDI performance you just programmed or played on your redrum set. When you first listen to your MIDI performance, you will hear some glitches because Superior Drummer needs to load them, and we're kind of listening to the MIDI performance. I suggest just play through the whole MIDI performance one time, and then Superior Drummer will load and just need the samples that's used for that specific MIDI performance. Now I will show you what I mean. You saw we started with almost 2 GB or 2 GB of RAM power, and I will play this little loop here, and I will show you how much we need at the end when we play this groove. So you see, after this whole beat, which included some fills and cymbal swells and ghost notes, now we are just at 400 MB, which is of course dramatically less than we had before. So this should be no problem then to keep Superior Drummer open in your DAW, in your mixing session. Please keep in mind that whenever you change the instrument or change the MIDI performance, you will do this run over and over again, but it's really helpful because you will save a lot of power. Tip number 2, envelope settings. So this is quite neat, and I talked about this quite some times already, even in Superior Drummer 2, but I will show you again. So sometimes the drums, because the drums were recorded in a big room, you have a lot of decay and sustain on drums. So let's listen to this big 16x18 Gretsch tom. So a lot of nice sustain, which is cool, but sometimes you need shorter drums because you play a fast fill, you do some heavy stuff, some metal stuff, where you really need like tight, punchy, in-your-face sounds without like this never-ending sustain. But there's a cool trick here in Superior Drummer on the right side where you see the envelope and offset setting. Click on the little point here below and pull it back until the sound has the length that you appreciate. If you change anything here in this drums window on the right side, and this goes for every other setting, this will affect the instrument globally. So no matter what you further do with tweaking, processing, adding instruments, this will affect the whole drum by itself. There are two other options, so let's bring it back. Two other options. When you go to the mixer channel and choose the microphone, the direct microphone on the floor tom, here on the right side, down in the bottom, you see the level envelope setting release again. And if you shorten this right here, this will affect just the sustain of that particular microphone. And when you go to one of the room microphones here, this will affect every single sample that's loaded, what you see here in the top right corner, in this instrument. So you can choose either to shorten the sustain of an instrument globally on the direct microphone, or on the room microphones where you can create like smaller rooms without having to mess with those big sustain of the big room, because sometimes you need a tight sounding drum kit when you play a ballad or for the metal guys. So play along with those settings and you will find the sound you need. Tip number 3, use different overhead channels to control the cymbals. By default, Superior Drummer loads up one pair of overheads, which is this overhead dynamic microphone here. but there's a second pair of overheads. And what I sometimes do is I choose this one here in the mixer section. I go to the samples. You see by default every single sample is disabled, and I will just load the cymbals that I need, or maybe even the snare and the toms, but usually I use the cymbals, because this will allow me to control the cymbals separately. Of course, this pair of overheads has a different tone, so you can play, maybe use this just for cymbals and this for the rest. But using into a DAW context or mixing context, I create a cymbal mic pair of microphone, which I control, automate, volume automation, do special processing without affecting the overall drum sound in the common overhead pair of microphones. So this is tip number 3. Use a different pair of overheads or room microphones to control cymbals or specific instruments that you like to process separately. Tip number 4 is expanding the outputs. By default, Superior Drummer sends every single channel into output 1 and 2 of your DAW, or to this channel here at the end. This is the output that goes into your DAW or to your front of house mixer, in which situation you might use Superior Drummer. But of course you can create really dedicated mono channels. So just pan. When you say, let's start with those two, they're both going to output 1 and 2. If you pan 1 hard left, hard right, and then you go to your DAW, in my case this is Reaper, and you assign this not to getting the input from output 1 and 2 from Superior Drummer, but make this a mono source 1, and the second channel here, mono 2, and we name it so it's more obvious. So now we have 2 dedicated, and I will solo them here. So with this trick, and of course you can continue doing this. So next one, do 3 and 4. Pan them hard left, hard right. Of course, this works for just for mono microphones, so don't do this with room microphones. But by this trick, you can expand the possible outputs of Superior Drummer dramatically, because other than that, you are limited to 16 channels, which is of course in 99 of 100 cases is enough. But it's a cool thing to know, and you can save this as a template when you use Superior Drummer. So send out mono channels to your DAW or to your FOH mixer if you use it in a live situation. And finally, tip number 5, and I talked about this already again, but using Superior Drummer preset sound to stack some of the existing sounds. Superior Drummer offers a huge variety of additional effect sounds, but not only electronic sounds like 808 kicks and percussion sounds, but some heavily processed snare and kick sounds to fatten up your existing drums. So for this, I will load, let's say, the Pearl Kit, which is already punchy. But when you add an instrument, which you do by clicking on an instrument, going to More, add to, let's say, to the center articulation here in this case. So this little window will show up where Superior Drummer offers you to choose one of the instruments to stack to this Tama snare. But then browse through your library. You see I own quite a lot of libraries, and scroll down until you have the Superior Drummer 3 preset sounds. And because we want to stack something to the snare drum, it shows just the snares that Superior Drummer has. You have some basic electronic sounds, but you have some preset sounds that are like heavily processed. Stack it, and now you can really fatten up your drums. Same for the kick. So let's first switch to the 18x22 because it's more punchy. Go to More, add to the open hit, scroll down, preset sounds. You have quite a lot of them. Again, some electronic sounds. But down here, the last one, this is where the fun begins. And when you play the groove, just enable the preset sound that you just chosen and play along with the level setting here in the top right corner when the stack sound is enabled. So bring it down, this is what I always recommend, bring it down and then bring it slightly up until you have the feeling that they're in the right ratio. Second thing, and you heard this already on the snare drum here, because this groove was played with ghost notes, and as those are one-shot samples, of course they are not recorded in that detail with all the velocities. So if you want that particular preset sound just to be triggered at highest velocities, highlight this as you see here, go to the right, enable the velocity gate, and this will determine in which velocity range this stack sound or any other sample that you include here will be triggered. So in this case I want to avoid that the stack sound will be triggered at ghost notes. So I bring up the fader here, let's say to 100. So now this stack snare will just be triggered at the loudest velocities. So you will hear the little snare drums, little ghost notes that are included in this pattern will just be trigger the Tama-Berber snare, and just the loud hits will trigger the stack snare. Let's have a listen. So that was my 5 quick tips for using Superior Drummer. I'd be highly interested if you have more tips for the community, for myself. In case I don't know something that you use, please leave a comment below. Let me know in the comment section what you use, what you find most helpful. Those were my 5 tips for using Superior Drummer. I hope this video helped you out. If you have any questions about the whole software, never hesitate to leave a comment. Hit me a message. You'll find me on Facebook as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, have a great and fantastic 2019. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye-bye.